Hello, I'm Joshua Schulman. I'm an assistant professor of neurology, molecular and human genetics, and neuroscience at Baylor College of Medicine, and an investigator in the Duncan Neurological Research Institute at Texas Children's Hospital. Well, as a neurologist, I'm expert in disorders that affect the brain. My focus is on adult neurological disorders, and in particular, Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease, which are neurodegenerative disorders. Alzheimer's disease is incredibly common. It affects more than 5 million people in the United States and 20 million people worldwide. It's a devastating problem, takes away people's ability to think and remember, and unfortunately, because it's currently incurable and we have no way of preventing its progression, there's a huge and urgent challenge to have better ways to treat this condition. We know that outside of brain cells, certain protein aggregates called amyloid plaques form, and these aggregate proteins have toxic influences on the function of neurons and ultimately might lead to their demise. In addition, there's another kind of protein aggregate called a tau tangle that forms within the neurons of the brain. And it's these two pathologies that accumulate over time and we think lead to the dysfunction of the brain and the loss of a large number of brain cells. So what we're trying to understand is how certain genetic variations might interact to affect the risk of disease and then its progression in the population. The goal of the research is that by understanding something about genetic risk, we may be able to intervene and alter those early mechanisms, which would lead to either a prevention or a cure. But we take two broad approaches. On the one hand, we participate in new gene discoveries, and these are studies that take place in humans. So we've participated in studies with tens of thousands of subjects who have Alzheimer's disease to try to improve our power to identify the types of changes that probably have epidemiologically important effects across the population. Once you find a gene or a group of genes that have a role, of course, it's quite limited what you can do in humans experimentally. Usually, to understand mechanism, you need to go to some experimental system, and that's where animal models, including the fruit fly or the mouse, come into play in the laboratory. The Alzheimer's Association has had an incredible and important influence, both for my own research and nationally and internationally for Alzheimer's disease. First of all, I should say as a clinician, when I have a patient who's having difficulty with dementia, the Alzheimer's Association provides a number of really important resources that are helpful for patients and families. And from the research standpoint, I was fortunate to get funding from the Alzheimer's Association at an early stage of developing my laboratory here at the NRI. Grants like that can be enormously impactful for young scientists that are at an early stage of developing their research program. The Alzheimer's Association has also had, fortunately, great success on the national level at lobbying Congress and the U.S. government about the importance of Alzheimer's disease research. And in part because of the Alzheimer's Association's lobbying efforts, we've seen a significant and important increase in Alzheimer's disease research dollars at the federal level. The pace of research in neurodegenerative diseases has been accelerating remarkably. Pieces of the puzzle begin to come together. We quickly can appreciate, the broader picture that is emerging, and I think there's a sense that we're at that kind of time in Alzheimer's disease. We have a better understanding of the molecular players, the mechanisms, a large number of genes, the different types of cells that are interacting in the brain to affect this condition. We have new ways of identifying individuals at very early stages when we can intervene, and we have a broad number of mechanistic hypotheses that create exciting opportunities to possibly intervene and treat this condition. So I think it's an exciting time, and we want to sustain that, and I think that's where continued and increased funding at the federal level will be of great importance.